Hello, everyone. Welcome to iMPACT, the show that celebrates individuals and organizations in your communities and up and down Florida's Space Coast who are making a difference. I am Kathy King, your host, and today we have a wonderful organization called Wings of Grace Ministries, and my guest is Dwight Bell, who is the founder of Wings of Grace. And Dwight, welcome to you. We are glad to have you on iMPACT.
Well, thank you, Kathy. Appreciate the opportunity to come and share.
Good. I hope that you're going to tell us a little bit about Wings of Grace and how you got involved in that first before we get into what exactly you do and what difference you're making in the community.
Yeah, so I don't know about you, but when I hear a story about a young person that's made a bad decision in their life and they've ended up ruining their life or ending up in jail, losing their life, or someone else has because of their action, sometimes I get physically ill over that. Just really bothers me. And so our ministry really wants to do something about that. And we think we found a way to connect to these teens. And it really started because when I was a teenager, I made a bunch of stupid decisions. Fortunately, I didn't get caught with some of the same things I did. But if I had, my life would have been dramatically different. And when I finally came to know the Lord and I wised up and I look back at wow, how did it come my life was a mess up to this point? I could see that when I was a teenager, I made bad decisions. So my heart really is to talk to teenagers and really to inspire them to improve and prosper their lives through the use of good decision-making skills.
And when did you decide to do Wings of Grace? How did that come about?
Well, I had tried to connect with teenagers. I've had some business success, and got them all together in my church and started to instill in them all this wisdom I'd picked up over the years. And I could tell within 2 or 3 minutes that they didn't want to hear anything I had to say. You know, they were looking up the ceiling and all of that. And I just could
do that, don't they?
Oh, they do, yes. It was... And I thought, wow, why can't I connect with these teens? I mean, I don't feel like I'm some old fuddy-duddy. I'm, a pretty hip dude. And but I just couldn't connect. Well, I got into flying. I started flying helicopters. And I was flying down the beach one day, and it just hit me. So, wow, aviation, this has everything in it that I want to teach these teenagers. And so from that little spark, I believe the Holy Spirit gave that to me, Wings of Grace was founded, and with our aviation program.
Wonderful. So I went to your website and perused all of the good information. Tell me a little bit about what the kids do. What are the age of the kids that you target? And are they guys and girls, or just guys, or?
We have both. Predominantly, I think we're 75% young men and 25% young women. Ages 13 to 18 to come into the program. When they turn 20, we cut them loose. But really, the design is to get a young man or woman in at 13, and they would be within our program throughout their high school years.
And how often do you meet with them?
We meet once a week during the school year. Our school calendar is September through May, just like the public school system. And then we get them in airplanes on weekends and evenings, whenever the weather, the airplane, the instructor, and the student, whenever they all intersect, we get them in for their flight instruction. And then we also have projects that we do on some of our rental houses, and we get them on working on those on weekends.
Right. So, okay, so tell me, if I were a 13-year-old boy and I got into the program and I didn't know much about aviation, but I knew that I really wanted to fly. I can see the end result, but not what I have to do to get there. Tell me a little bit about the program. I read that you have flight simulators, and so there's a lot of classroom information that they need to get before they can actually get into a plane. So how does that work?
Yeah, actually we get them into the airplane pretty quick because that's the exciting part.
Absolutely.
Now the book work sometimes can be dry, and this is what we're teaching is FAA certified curriculum. We're not dumbing it down for young people. So a 13-year-old coming in is having to learn the same thing that an airline pilot would have to in his early 20s starting out. And it's basically learning how the airplane works, how aerodynamics works, airspace, regulations, all of that. So there is a lot of book work. But what we do is we'll teach a lesson, and then usually we'll get them on a simulator right away, so that they get the feel of how an airplane works. So they learn how the controls work and all of that. But we get them into the airplane soon after that, and then the simulator really helps because they're not intimidated now by the airplane.
Right.
They know if they pull back, they're going to go up, and turn it, they're going to turn, and so on.
Well, the thing that fascinated me about Wings of Grace is that It's not just an aviation program. It is very, very closely based on the scriptures. And tell us how you would look for an aeronautic passage in the scriptures and how you have connected those two, so that you're not just teaching these kids how to fly a plane, you're teaching them about the Christian principles of life and how important they are. Because this is the basis of your ministry.
It is. But the first thing is the aviation is the hook. The teens think they're coming in to learn how to fly airplanes, and they do. But really our desire is to teach them the gospel, to reach them with the gospel, because we believe that the gospel is the solution to all of our problems, that wherever there's lack or poverty or problems, that somehow we're out of alignment with God. And so that's predominantly what we're going to do, is teach the gospel. Now, when I was a teenager, I never thought that I would die, and so the gospel message didn't really make any sense to me. Not that I was so much adverse to it, but hey, if you're not going to die, what do you need to think about what happens after life?
Right? Do anything.
Right. So good-hearted people that tried to connect with me, it didn't work. But with the aviation, I can use that. That's the connecting point. So, but as I got into it, I could see the principles all over. For instance, a big one that we talk about is a pre-flight. Before we get into the airplane or the helicopter, we walk around that aircraft and do a thorough inspection. We check the fuel, make sure there's no water in it, check the oil, all of the flight surfaces, make sure they're connected. I mean, just overall look at that airplane and make sure that it's airworthy. So where would you find that in the Bible? Well, in Ephesians chapter 6, Paul talks about putting on the armor of God every day. So in effect, we should, as Christians, pre-flight ourselves every morning. If we would do that, put on the armor of God, I think that you would find that your day would go a lot better for you.
Exactly.
Well, it certainly does in the airplane. If you pre-flight it, you eliminate a lot of issues.
Many of the arrows don't connect.
That's right, yes.
And you also spoke of power of a command. I know I was fascinated by the 5 principles of aviation and antidotes that the kids really learned that there is a bottom line to flight school and there's a bottom line to Christian life. And so tell us a little bit about the power of command and how that works.
Yes, what that is, that's the pilot in command concept. And basically what that is there's only one pilot in an aircraft. Even if you have a co-pilot, there's still what's called the pilot in command. And that person has total authority over that flight. So whatever he says, bottom line, whatever he decides, that's how it's going to go. And everybody is trained with that. There can only be one person flying that airplane at a time. So everybody likes that part because we all want to be in control, you know, and especially teenagers, you know. Geez, right. I want to get out from under the thumb of my parents and that. I want to live my life in that. So we tell them, hey, you can, because you are pilot in command of your life. Because when it really comes down to it, people can tell you what to do, but you're pilot in command, and it's up to you to decide whether you're going to do it or not. So if your teachers and your parents and all that tell you to study, well, you don't have to unless you want to, because you're pilot in command. Now, on the other side of that, the pilot in command is totally responsible for the flight, too. So if anything goes wrong with it, it goes back on the pilot in command. So we really get that concept across, that hey, you get to decide, you get to make the decisions, but you're also accountable for your decisions.
Right.
And every decision you make will have a consequence, either good or bad.
Because you spoke of accident, I'm not sure how it was worded, but...
Oh, probably the accident chain.
Yes. And that, when I first read that, I thought, oh my, I didn't really quite understand it, but I went back and looked at it under Christian principles. And when you and I spoke earlier, we were talking about, you gave a great example of a couple in distress. So tell us a little bit more about that, about how the chain works as far as the actual outcome of the accident.
Yeah, most people think that an aircraft crashes because something just happens and the airplane comes down. But if you look at all of the accident investigations, that's rarely the case. Usually there is a thing called the accident chain. And what it is, it's a series of events that, if it's not broken somewhere along the line, will eventually overwhelm the pilot and cause a crash. A prime example is there was a crash down in the Everglades back in the 70s. I don't know if you remember that. Airplane just actually flew into the Everglades at night. Well, that all started, they were coming from New York into Miami. They were expecting to arrive at midnight. So it was dark, it was a moonless night, and they were coming in final and put the landing gear down, and one of the nose gear indicator light didn't come on. So they suspected that the bulb was bad, but it was only a 3-month-old airplane, or less than a year old. So they wanted to make sure. They didn't really have any other way to know that the nose gear was down. So they went and started circling around the Everglades at 2,000 feet. And they got so preoccupied with trying to find out if that light bulb was on that they forgot to fly the airplane. But there were several warnings all along the way. This is the accident chain. Well, first of all, it was a moonless, dark night, so they couldn't see outside. Now, if it had been in the daytime, it wouldn't have happened. So that part of the accident chain would have solved it. So they went out there, they put it on autopilot at 2,000 feet. Well, they told one of the guys to go down into the hole to see what he could see, and they think that the guy hit the yoke just a little bit, and that airplane was designed so that the autopilot remembered your last input. So it input the yoke just a little bit, put the airplane in a slight decline. Yikes. Now that didn't cause the accident in itself. However, if they'd caught that, that would have prevented it. And then a low altitude alarm warning went off. But it happened to be over the desk of the guy that went down in the hold, so nobody heard it. So you can see in that if they had heard that, then that would have solved it.
Like a domino effect.
Yeah, the tower mentioned something, but there was a little miscommunication. But if they'd caught that, it would have solved it. Well, anyway, the airplane crashed into the Everglades, and a bunch of people were killed. Some survived. But that's an example of the accident chain.
The earth is our home. Please, if you're a motorist or a pedestrian, do not spread trash all over our home. The only one responsible for picking up after yourself is you. Be smart. Don't litter.
Dwight, speaking of your accident chain and what you teach the kids about good decision-making skills, tell us a little bit about a story that has related to the teens that you work with.
Well, one I really like to use is a teen being invited to a teen party. So that would be the first chain in the accident link. So they're invited to a teen party. So that in itself is no big problem. But let's say a few days later, the teen hears, well, there's going to be alcohol there. So, well, now there could be a problem. But you say, well, I don't drink, so I'm going to go to the party and just enjoy my friends and all that, and I'm just going to stay away from the alcohol. So you go into the party, and then you're there and having a good time, and then the prettiest cheerleader on the team comes up to you with a beer. You know, what are you going to do? I mean, just about everybody's going to take that beer, just to peer pressure, you know. So even then, you could just have one or just pretend like you're drinking it, right? But you go ahead and you have a few more, and you become inebriated. And then you decide, well, it's time to go home, so you get in your car, and you drive home, and you have an accident, and somebody gets hurt. So what I questioned our teens, I said, okay, where would you have nipped this? Where would be the best place to stop this accident chain? So someone will say, well, I wouldn't go to the party. And so then I would say, well, you could do that, but then you'd be so conservative in your life that you might never do anything. So going to a party, that in itself is no big deal. So the next thing, probably that would be the best time to do it. You hear there's underage drinking, that we want to live by the law in that, and it's against the law for teens to drink. So that would probably be the best time to nip it. But let's say that you did go ahead and decide to go to the party, and the cheerleader offers you the drink. Well, you could say no. You could nip it there. Or again, you could take it and just maybe sip on it, or you only have one drink. But you keep on going, and you have more, and you get drunk. Well, even then, you have a chance to nip the accident chain. You could call your parents or have a friend drive you home. You don't have to get behind the wheel. But instead, you do, and then you have the accident. So you can see that there are several stages there that you could have stopped this accident, nipped the accident chain. But as you also see, the deeper you get into it, the more difficult it is to get out of it.
So accountability and responsibility are two major things that you teach these kids.
Yes.
And do they understand better, and I'm sure they do, when they get into an airplane and the magnitude of the decisions that they make in there and the magnitude they make in their life choices? What happens if they make a bad decision in flight school? I mean, the repercussions are out of the program, or, I mean, do they have to live up to a certain amount of standards for you?
Oh, yes. In fact, we don't really have trouble with them, because right up front, I get them together the first day of the class, and I say, look, who lets teenagers fly airplanes? Really, you got to be sort of a nut to let a teenager get into an airplane and fly it. Said, but that's what we do here. But we have to worry about your life. We have to worry about the instructor's life, people on the ground, the equipment that we're renting, you know, somebody's airplane that we're using. We got to worry about all this stuff. So how do we know if you're mature enough to get into that airplane? And you can just see them sitting there wondering, yeah, how do you know if we're mature enough? And I say, well, by the way you act on the ground. So
right.
if you come in here and you start tearing up the simulators, we find out you're skipping school, you're having trouble at home with your parents, you come in and you want a maternity flight suit, that just tells us that, hey, you're not mature enough to get behind the yoke of the airplane. So maybe next year, but not right then. Well, they like to fly so much that their behavior, they won't
right.
do anything to jeopardize their flying.
And once they get into it, they love it so much, I'm sure that they want to continue.
Yeah, we have this thing in aviation called the flying bug. And you get the flying bug, and that's all you want to do is get back into that airplane one way or another. So we really don't have too much trouble.
And I'm thinking you have it.
Oh, I have it, yes, yes.
Well,
and I use that's another thing, because I'm upfront with them. I made a lot of mistakes when I was a teen, and it foreclosed a lot of opportunities that I have. I would have loved to have been an airline pilot, but because of messing up with my life, and then I got into aviation late in life, I was too old to do it. So for me, I missed out on a lot of opportunities. Now, I still was fortunate to get into flying, and I fly commercially now, but not like I could have.
And you're giving these kids an opportunity of a lifetime. I know you said that you took 25 to 30 kids, 30 max, and there's no cost for the program. How do you justify that? Because it seems to be a very expensive thing for the simulators and the planes and the helicopters, and how do you work around that cost to you?
It is. It's real expensive. We're, depending on the airplane, $140 to $160 an hour to get them into the airplane for the lesson. You have to have a minimum of 40 hours of instruction, and that would be for the most sharp pilot that could do it in that amount. So yeah, it's a very expensive program. But I really believe it's worth the investment, just from what I can see with the teens. We have a variety of ways that we raise funds. The big one, though, is I was in real estate most of my life, and when I got into this ministry, I thought, geez, this is all I want to do. I don't want to do anything else, and I want to get out of real estate. And I believe the Lord spoke to me and said, Dwight, you've been in real estate one way or another since you were a teenager. Why would you want to throw away all of that experience? Why not use that for the kingdom? And so I really got thinking about it, and what we did is we developed our housing arm to the ministry. And so what we do is we buy rental homes, mainly foreclosures, and we put people to work, a lot of the teenagers, rehabbing the houses, painting them, fixing them up, and all of that. And we rent them to people that have been struggling, and we tell them right up front, hey, we don't give you free rent. You have to pay your rent because we need it to pay for what we're doing with our teenagers. But we'll give you a second chance. So if you have evictions on your records, poor credit, and all of that, hey, if you're really committed to getting your life straightened out, we'll make it easy for you to get in one of our houses. And then the rent that we get goes to pay for the flight program. So the teens earn flight time working on the house, and then the rents pay for what we do with getting them into the airplane.
And I would imagine they love that hard labor, because
They
it makes
do.
it all that much more real to them.
Yeah, there's many of them told me said, that they really love going on those work days. They said, you know, otherwise I just would spend the Saturdays just playing around on the video games and things like that. And so we get them together, and they're all working together. We have a project that we accomplish. And then really where we have a lot of the ministry is we go out to lunch afterwards, or a late, early afternoon thing. Everybody's tired and dirty and all that, but just eating and that camaraderie together, and the sense of teamwork is
It's a great amount
really
of
great.
fellowship with
Yes.
kids who have the same mind of spirit and focus. I also read that you have a very special music ministry, and tell us a little bit about that. I want you to just give a little verbal shout out to your sweet wife,
Yes.
who
Well,
I have met. She's wonderful.
The same thing. She loves this ministry, and we had 3 boys of our own, and they're all gone, and the empty nest syndrome hit her hard, and so now she says, well, I've got 25 kids now. So she really loves what we're doing. But she also has been a musician, really started playing the piano when she was 5. She's very gifted. And so, well, just like I use the housing, my gift in housing for this ministry, she uses her gift in music for the ministry. So she performs in a lot of places around, and it really is a fundraiser for us, brings in funds to pay for the flight program. And just the exposure is a great way to talk to people about the ministry and what we do.
Absolutely. The way the program works is that the kids come, you said 13 to 18, and they meet once a week. But I'm not sure whether you mentioned this earlier, and if you have, I apologize. You want them to be with you the entire time through their high school years,
Yes.
because that makes a great difference. Tell me how that impacts those kids, other than just one summer or 1 year of working with you.
Yeah. Well, what we think is that they need that influence, Christian influence, throughout their teen years. That every teen is vulnerable. That they're at risk.
Yes.
Some more so than others. But even the wealthy families, their children are at risk because it's
Even
just
the
one
happy
bad
ones.
decision away. And so it's our idea is to stay involved with those teens. We're really creating a relationship. Like I say, they think they're coming in to learn how to fly, but for us it's so much more. And it's just so rewarding to see these. I've got one that started out when he was 13. He's just getting ready to take his check ride. He's 17 now. So he's done all of his requirements.
Gosh.
He's just waiting for the FAA examiner to take him up for his final flight, and he'll earn his pilot's license. And so I have a picture of him at his very first lesson when he was 13, and then I have one when he soloed, and then I'll have one here when he gets his license. And just to see him through the years to grow and get closer to the Lord, and just the confidence that is built when they get into the airplane and all that. Is just no, we need to stay involved in their lives. That's
Good. Well, you also said that there was a college credit, and you are affiliated with a college, a missionary college. Tell us about that, because that doesn't mean that they just stop at 17. They can keep on going and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is, I know, one of your big passions.
That's it. Yes, I'm on the board of the College of Missionary Aviation, based out of Gainesville, or a little town northeast of Gainesville, Keystone Heights. And what we've worked with them is sort of like the dual enrollment system that we have in the public school, with the public school and the community colleges. And so our flight programs that we do will earn them college credit, so that when we go into, if they decide to go into missionary aviation, that when they go into college, they already have that expense paid and some college credits. We're also working with them to develop some Christian curriculum so that they can start earning college courses in Bible studies and things like that. The College of Missionary Aviation is designed it was founded to get people out on the mission field that really have a desire to go out and use aviation to do it without the exorbitant cost that it would take to get all the ratings and everything if you went to a FIT or Embry-Riddle.
Right.
You go to one of those schools and your student debt is going to be $150,000, $200,000. So we give low-cost flight instruction to those that want to go out in the mission field. And we also have this with the Baptist College of Florida. Same thing, that they'll take what we do and give them college credit.
Wow. So the world is, well, let me just say this: the sky's the limit.
Oh, there
right?
you go. That's right. Yes.
Well,
yeah,
I
heaven,
mean,
really. Yes.
Exactly. Heaven is. I'm just fascinated by this ministry, and I know that you have put your heart and soul into it, and it seems to be working wonderfully as far as the teens go. Where do you reach out for those teens? Tell me where you bring them from. Are they all local, or do they come from around the state, or?
They're pretty much Brevard County. We've got some in Titusville, some in Merritt Island. We're based in Melbourne. We have a van that picks them up in Merritt Island, shuttles them down. We do have one that lives over in Orlando, that drives over. We would like to have had several pastors of some churches around like the program, and they would like to implement it in other parts of the state. We're working on that so that we can expand it. The big thing is the fundraising, because it's just so expensive to get them in the airplane.
Right. Have you reached out to the STEM programs in the high schools? I know they're really big connecting with aviation and the courses that they take. And
we do have some inroads with some people in the school. One difficulty we have is that we're really gospel-centered and Christ-centered, and there are some issues there. But we do some things with the public school. In fact, we put on a Valentine's jazz concert every year. And 2 years ago, we had the Eau Gallie High School, some of their jazz band members come in and join Angela for that concert. So
their principal is a strong Christian. He's a wonderful man.
Yes. So we can get into the schools. Jesus said you have to be as innocent as a dove and as wise as a serpent. So there's ways to do it.
Well, I am just, again, I'm just fascinated by this. When I was looking at the website, and I know we spoke months ago, and I'm so thrilled to have had you on the show today to allow our viewers to see you and meet you and hear about this wonderful ministry. Anything else you would like to share with us that would be a kernel of knowledge?
A lot of people have a fear of ministering to, or just actually getting into ministry. They think that they have to have a Bible education or go through a seminary, and that's just not the case. You just need a willing heart. And I found that my passion for aviation is a way that I can connect. But there are some young people out there that don't have any interest in aviation, but they do have an interest in sports. And there's some I know that want to be an accountant. So a person that has an accounting background or an accounting practice could mentor a young person, or an auto mechanic. We can really impact our youth if we get out there and fight this battle. So don't be intimidated by your lack of biblical knowledge or degrees or that. Just use the passion for what you have to reach these young people. And we can make this world a better place. Absolutely.
Everything that in every job, Christian-based principles can be found. Dwight, thank you so much for being with us today. I encourage our viewers to go to wingsofgraceministries.org and learn more about this program. It is a fabulous thing for our youth. And as you said, your heart is so strong for our kids, and that's just a wonderful thing to do. I'm Kathy King, and I thank you for joining us on this version of Impact. We will see you next time. Thanks to everyone who has been a part of this, and have a fabulously blessed evening.
More information about this program is available online at millermediagroup.org.